Judgment. Final judgment. Final Welcome, everybody. Final Judgment right here. Tony Jigsaw Cutillo. And again, man, tomorrow's the big day. Tomorrow's MRI results for the leg. So prayers go out. Hopefully, the MRI comes back clean. I don't know. Knock on wood, right? A knock on my desk right here. Hopefully, again, it comes back okay and I can go about my normal life eventually. But until then, we wait, right? We live here, relegated to the studio. This is the Final Judgment, obviously brought to you by Heat Ratio and Win Daily Sports, powered by SEObrand.com. Again, man, this is going to be, only 2 judgments tonight, but I got a really good show lined up. I went a little early, usually it's 10 o'clock, but it's Monday Night Football. I know nobody really cares because it's the Giants and the Cowboys, but when you're a betting guy like me and a fantasy guy like myself, I do the showdown shows over there at Win Daily Sports. So I got to represent a little bit. So I got to see what's going on within that game, if some of my picks come out or not. So definitely something to watch. This is Raw night, Monday Night Raw. So I got to watch that later as well. But as always, man, thanks for everybody tuning in. Make sure you're following the page at Judge Jigsaw on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Make sure you're following The Final Judgment with Tony Cutillo. It's podcasted everywhere. So you don't have to be on YouTube. You don't have to be on Facebook. You can go right to the podcast, listen to it on Spotify, listen to iHeartRadio, listen to it on Apple Music, Amazon, everywhere. My crazy mug is everywhere nowadays. So make sure you're checking that out and giving me any kind of review that you want. It's okay. Whether you like me or you hate me, don't really care. My man Jose checking in says, let's go Big Blue. Yes, I'll take that. I'll take that, Jose. I'll take Big Blue because nobody want, no matter how much money I bet, I don't want the boys to win. So it doesn't really matter. Big win yesterday. So obviously we're going to touch on that. Okay. We're going to touch on, obviously, the Eagles defensive line broke out in a big way. I mean, I can't say this enough. A big way, right? They broke out tremendously with 9 sacks. Former quarterback Carson Wentz looked lost. He looked dazed. He looked confused. Looked like he had nothing to do with that game. But again, they failed to score in the second half, score all their points, 24 points in the second quarter. And again, is this a concern moving ahead? I know we're all worried about the Super Bowl talk, and we're all worried about the MVP talk, but we may want to talk about, those guys leaning off the gas a little bit and not going full throttle in the second half, because against good teams, that could come back to bite them in the you-know-what. So we want to lay judgment on that. Judgment number 2. Listen, you guys know I bring some different things to the table here. So got a great interview. It's under 15 minutes. Make sure you enjoy it. Obviously, the MLB continues to put processes to try and stop teams from getting an early edge. So, however, with new technologies, Apple Watches, iPads, right, StatCast, you have so many things that MLB uses. What will it ever be enough? And I'm joined by Dan Levitt. Listen, Dan Levitt does all kinds of talk when it comes to MLB. He was just on MLB Network with Brian Kinney. Comes out with a brand new book, International Balk, Baseball's Thin Line Between Innovation and Cheating. to sort it all out. He talks about the stuff that happened in the 80s and 90s today. He's talking Quirk Bats. He's talking about the Astros. A lot of great stuff in that book. Make sure you go check it out. It's going to be in the description where you can get that book. Listen, very inexpensive, but a great read. I can guarantee that. Have that interview coming up. We asked him about Pujols. I asked him about A-Rod, Barry Bonds, right? Bud Selig. A lot of cool things he had to say. So make sure you check that out. And again, we got some random judgments that they're going to come in as well. Dan checking in. What's up, DMG Teach? I love when I see that on Twitch checking in. So right into the Eagles. And, I'll keep this energy up as long. But, man, get your comments. Let me know how you feeling. How you feeling about this team, man? Because it's got to be a great day. We're 3-0. And I'm tired of all the fabricated arguments. I've been talking about that forever. Either be in or be out. If you have concerns, that's fine. But if you're all in, be all in. If you're all out, be all out. But stay all out because I don't want you back in. Okay? Because there's something special going on. Something special going on here in Philadelphia. And again, you had so many big time performances in this game. Again, this is an NFC East battle. No matter what, no matter how bad the team is, no matter how good the team is, whenever you have these kinds of battles, they tend to be slobber knockers. Another, no pun intended, Mr. Jim Ross. If you don't know Jim Ross, then you don't know wrestling. But I did not expect us to go in there and completely shellac the Washington Commanders. I did not. I got it right this time. I said Commanders. I really did it. And again, this is Riverboat Ron. Say what you want. The guy's a veteran of the game. He's a tremendous head coach. Zach Del Rio, say what you want. He does know how to basically hype up a defense. We know that. Jalen Hurts. Again, let's talk about it. Jalen Hurts. Hear the MVP chants once again. I know it's early. I get it, right? I'm not saying he's going to be the MVP of the league. What I'm saying is it's very noticeable on how much work this guy put in the offseason. It's very noticeable the work he put in on his mechanics. It's very noticeable the coaching staff that has put the pieces around him that he needs to succeed. It's very noticeable that Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni are devising a game plan to not only help, but enhance what Jalen Hurts does so well. And the one thing you cannot teach and you continue to talk about, because we have to, is the mental IQ, the capacity of Jalen Hurts, the student that he really is of the National Football League. This dude takes no prisoners. This dude takes no for an answer, and you saw it right there. I think one of the biggest things from this game, I think very important, obviously, A.J. Brown. Like, thank you, Tennessee. Can I just bow and say thank you so much to the Tennessee Titans for pissing A.J. Brown off so much that he wanted to get out so bad, and they wanted to be rid of him so bad that he came here to be our number one receiver. On the other end, 8 for 169 and 1, Devontae Smith just showing, don't forget about me. Don't forget about me. Or I told you last week, it would all come back around. Okay, between the two of them, 13 catches, 254 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That is unheard of. I don't remember seeing double wide receiver numbers like that ever, except maybe Jeremy Maclin and Deshaun Jackson, right? If you think about that before Jeremy Maclin got hurt. So again, we need to really enjoy this. And I don't care about people telling me, relax. I don't care. I want to enjoy this. I'm going to enjoy every single minute of it. Listen, I can't walk. I got a crutch everywhere. I got to go up and down the steps on my butt. And you tell me that I can't enjoy watching a shellacking of the Washington Commanders? I can't enjoy what's going on right now with the Philadelphia Eagles? Listen, yeah, I do all kinds of work all over, whether it be win daily, whether it be heat ratio, whether it be serious, doesn't matter. I talk about all NFL, but the Eagles are still my team. And again, what they've been able to do cannot go unrecognized. It cannot go unnoticed. The NFL has been put on notice right now. The NFL has been put on notice. We talked about this in the preseason. NFC is weak. Listen, the Minnesota Vikings go out and they lay another egg. They lay another egg. It's something's going on out there. Another rookie head coach, right? You got to look at that. When rookie head coaches come in, they struggle in the beginning. Nick Sirianni did it last year, right? It's going to happen. It's a different element for them. They have to get used to the speed. You know how they say rookies come in the NFL and they say they have to get used to the speed of the game, the speed of the NFL? Well, it's the same thing with head coaches. They have to get used to the speed of the NFL, right? You just saw Nathaniel Hackett brings in a senior advisor specifically because he's like, look, there's too much going on. There's too much, and good for him. He said, you know what? And Nick Sirianni, what did he do? Finally said, listen, Shane Steichen's got to call the plays. I need to back out. I need to back off. Right. And that's what needs to happen. And I think that's what's going to happen. But right in Minnesota, but for right now, and that's Kevin O'Connell, local product, I mind you. So even though he's in Minnesota, we definitely root for him specifically. But the one thing about this team is if there's any weaknesses, that was kind of that stress from those weaknesses, I think was kind of alleviated yesterday. And I say that because 9 sacks is no joke. Now, okay, Trent Williams goes down, probably the anchor of that offensive line. So we can't not talk about that. Okay. When you're talking about, how about BG? BG at 32, 33, 34 years old, whatever the hell he is. Okay. With a blown out Achilles coming back at this age and had a step. He had a burst. 2.5 sacks. My man had a burst. And then on top of that, you're talking about finally Hassan Reddick gets in a sack and a half. Finally, he gets in the fray. Fletcher Cox, finally, Josh Sweat, who's been there all year. He's the one guy that's been getting to the quarterback. And then Javon Hargrave just blows up the middle, who he will be signing an extension. You guarantee that Javon Hargrave will be here for the next 3 years. But it's very, very, don't forget about our boy TJ Edwards as well. Talked about him last week. TJ Edwards coming in, taking some stuff down. So again, I don't want to spend a whole show on this because like I said, I like to do this in segments, 15-minute segments. But again, the Eagles, I mean, we really need to start looking at 2, 3, 4 weeks ahead and start playing our calendars because this is must-watch football. Just like Aaron Judge is on the watch for home run for Babe Ruth, this is must-watch football. Finally, again, for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm excited, very excited. Now, I don't want to come on here and talk for an hour about the same thing over and over again. The only thing I'm concerned about is the second half offense. Now, we score 24 points in the second quarter, all 24, then we don't score again. If we play a better team, is this a different story? I mean, you watched that great game between Miami and Buffalo. Can't believe Miami came away with that win. But if you're playing a team like Buffalo, you can't afford not to score in an entire half, right? You play a team like the Rams, you can't afford to not score in an entire half. That's a major issue that we really have to look out for. Okay, so I think that's something that has been hidden by these 3 games because we've won and because a lot of the concerns have been alleviated a little bit. But I think this is a big concern that we have to look at. And I'm not going to harp on it. I'm just saying it's something that needs to be fixed. Is it fixable? Absolutely. I think let's not get cute with some of the play calling. I think let's overall just understand, okay, that we need to fix this and we need to do better. Like Jalen Hurts says all the time, this isn't a finished product, right? It's not a finished product. So just so you know, the way this show is going to go, it's Mondays and Thursdays right here on the Final Judgment. Monday is going to kind of be like Eagle-centric talk because it's a reaction show, right? We talk Eagles, and there'll be a couple other segments as well, whether it be a national sport, okay, whether it be a Philly sport, okay, whether it be an interview like we have today, whether it be a beat reporter, an author that has something that has to do with the sports arena, okay? And then Thursday is going to be more like an NFL review. Going to be some fantasy talk, some sports betting talk. We're going to add that in as well. And then could be another interview. Okay. And then also what's going on in the world of sports, whether it be basketball. Today was media day for the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm sure we'll talk a little Sixers talk on Thursday as well. Okay, but then we also have make sure you're checking out Tuesday, every Tuesday Heat Ratio Live. Me and the boys, whether it be Dan, whether it be Nick, whether it be Al, just covering the entire Philly sports era as a whole. Okay, so there's will be more reaction show tomorrow night. But right now, let me just ask this question, and I would love to see it in the comments. I'd love to hear what everybody thinks, but like, who right now are you afraid of in the NFC? It's been 3 weeks. Saw a lot of finished product. I know there's two teams playing tonight. Not really concerned about the boys on either side. But who are you concerned going forward? That's what I want to know. So 2 judgments on this first one, and get it in the comments while we watch the second interview, because we got Dan Levitt coming up. Okay. I want to know, are you worried about the second half score? And number one, and number two, who are you afraid of in the NFC? Is there anybody else who you're afraid of? Who is threatening to the Philadelphia Eagles? So I think that's important as well. But right now, I'm going to bring in a fantastic interview. Okay. And again, make sure you're following The Final Judgment with Tony Cutillo on YouTube. It's a specific page. Make sure you're following Heat Ratio Sports on YouTube for all your sports centric needs. And make sure you're following Win Daily Sports for all your sports betting and DFS needs as well on YouTube. And make sure you're following a podcast, The Final Judgment. Okay. Just type it in The Final Judgment with Tony Cutillo. It comes up everywhere. And hit subscribe. Give me a rating, whatever you think. But right now, we've been over and over again in Major League Baseball talk. A lot of things have happened. A lot of things going this year. We never thought Albert Pujols would have hit 700, would be chasing 700. But as of this show, he hit 700. We never thought that Aaron Judge would be chasing history as well. A lot of stuff back in the day that we've dealt with Cork Bats, the Houston Astros, Alex Rodriguez, Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, right? Bud Selig, Mark McGwire. The list goes on. So Dan Levitt writes a book, International Balk, the baseball's thin line between innovation and cheating. Him and a co-author, Mark Armour. And what they do is they bring in all these conspiracies and give their own personal touch to the game of the past and the game of the future. I think they do a great job. Make sure you're checking out the book as well. I'm going to bring Dan on this interview we just did a couple days ago. It's been fantastic. Make sure you check it out. It's under 15 minutes long. A lot of great questioning, a lot of great answers by Dan. Again, he's done so much work all over MLB Network and everywhere else. You can catch him on Twitter. His handle will be right on the screen. Make sure you give him a follow. But right now, let's bring him in and talk a little baseball. Welcome in, everybody, to another interview episode, like we do here on The Final Judgment with Tony Cutillo. I have a fantastic guest. We're going to talk about a great book for baseball. It's right here. It's International Balk right here. Okay. It's going to talk about cheating. It's going to talk about innovation. It's a wonderful art, a wonderful work of art, in my opinion. Dan Levitt is the author of International Balk. Moreover, he's an MLB Network TV commentator, frequent sports radio guest. He was just on MLB Network, I think August 9th, with Brian Kenny talking about the book. A recipient of the Society for American Baseball Research 2015 Bob Davis Award, and most importantly, diehard fan of the game. Dan, thanks so much for joining me, man.
Appreciate it. Great to be here.
This book, I don't think you could go for a perfect time right now than to release this book, which is great. And this isn't your first. So everybody knows Dan, along with Mark, has written previous books as well. We're going to get into that a little bit so he can let you know everything that he's been doing. But first off, I mean, this one really hits home for me because of the era we are. So that being said, just tell me and the audience how this book came to be.
Well, one of the things, so Mark and I were looking at a number, you see all these different scandals pop up, whether it's sticky stuff on the ball or the sign stealing or steroids. And, Mark and I are baseball historians, and we're looking at this thinking there needs to be sort of a broader look at this. Each one of these is looked at fairly discreetly. And we're thinking, there's connections between them. What's the historical context? And as you were saying, it's a great time to come out with this book. But part of the fun of this is that almost any time you would have come out with this book from 1850 to now would have been a good time to come out with this book, because the first thing when you start doing it, and the nature of cheating has changed, but it's always been going on.
It has. It's been going on for a long time, and that's what we're going to get into it. But what I want to ask you about that is in chapter 1, deception, it says many of the examples are clearly rule breaking, though there is a consensus within the game that they are acceptable, even honorable, but inevitably not everyone agrees. To ask you, why is that? Because it seems like no matter how much evidence people bring out, either people don't care or they just don't want to believe it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're talking about there is sort of this deception on the field of the umpire, right?
Okay.
You trap the ball in the outfield, you hold it up, you say you caught it. You're the first baseman, and maybe you pull your foot off the bag a split second early so you can get the out call at first, even if the ball's not quite there. And that's stuff where, I think we're all taught that from, the time we're pretty much in Little League. If you trap the ball, you try and hold it up and claim it's a catch. And so the deception of the umpire is something we talk about as to how do we view that. And I think that that's viewed differently than items where you're doing something in the back room that there's no real way to catch, whether that's corking the bat or something like PEDs before we had testing. And so that's sort of what we're getting at there. And then the other thing is how serious do people think it is? If something doesn't work, nobody really cares. The fact that the Astros, if the Astros had lost in the divisional round, would we still care as much about it? So there are a few things that go into that.
That's a great point, because that's the thing. Like if they didn't win, because everybody hates winners, right? So it's like, they think about it. Would we really care? And it's funny. I mean, you say cheating in baseball has been around since the inception of the game. But even with the strict regulations, like we see it now with the umpires checking the hands of the pitchers, but why will it still exist quietly? I mean, no matter what they do, this is still going to be an ongoing issue, correct?
Well, what we have found in general, and I don't think this is unique to baseball, but one of the themes of our book is that the professional players look at cheating, and many of them do, as a cost-benefit analysis, not a moral issue. George Bamberger, the old manager of the Brewers and Mets, said, we're professional baseball players. We don't play baseball. And he talked about, we look at if we can get away with something and what are the consequences, not what is right or wrong. And I think that permeates professional sport, and that you look at it as, if I don't get caught, it's okay. Or many players do. And again, that has to do with whether, again, it's steroids or sign stealing or corking your bat. Or if you're at the front office trying to get players, illegally roster players.
And that goes on as well, right? All this stuff goes on, and that's why this is a fantastic conversation. Again, we're talking to Dan Levitt, the author of International Balk Baseball's Thin Line Between Innovation and Cheating. Let me ask you this, because coming into this season, nobody thought, because you're a real big analytical guy, nobody thought Aaron Judge and Albert Pujols would be chasing history, especially Albert, right? So we never thought that. But they're doing it in the so-called clean era of baseball. But will there always be a question? Like, even if these guys do it, because Albert played in that, in the beginning of that steroid era, and Aaron Judge is just a man beast, right? So I feel like no matter what these guys do, somebody's always gonna be like, is he really clean, right?
Well, obviously we have no way of really knowing. My take is that once they started testing, I think people naturally stopped, and they added the penalties. I mean, if you look at this from a cost benefit, I mean, the chances of getting caught are fairly big. And if you're caught and you get the 80-game suspension, that's a real penalty. And plus what it does to your reputation. So I can't see it really happening much today. The issue from the 90s, the 1990s, was really, there was no way to catch anybody. There was no testing. And if you did, there wasn't really penalties anyway. So we have no way of knowing, people, there was estimates from anywhere from 10 to, 50% of the players were taking it. And there's just, we don't know. And so that's part of what makes everything so, emotionally unsettling. It's hard to place judgment on it when we don't really know what was going on.
That's true. I mean, you mentioned 80 games. I mean, just ask Fernando Tatis about that, right? I mean, he got that this year, so that's a big deal. And you mentioned the 90s, and I ask this all the time, right? And just because you had an era where baseball was kind of dead after the strike, and you had the race for the record, which you do talk about that chase with Sammy Sosa, Mark McGuire, and that was the Bud Selig commissioner years, and listen, it's speculative, but I personally feel like he knew what was going on. He turned a blind eye, and he's in the Hall of Fame, right? But guys like Barry Bonds don't get in the Hall of Fame, even though it was in that era where he knew what was going on. I mean, it's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Selig, there's a couple of things. One is I think Selig came late to picking up on it, but once he did, I think he pushed for it. So he clearly
Okay.
came later than we would have liked. I mean, there was articles in the early 90s. I think, Selig talked about in his book anyway, about seeing when the Andro story came out, when they've had the Andro and Mark McGuire's locker, and, that wasn't then defined as a steroid. And that was clearly later than, when a lot of this stuff started. But, I mean, there was only so much he could do too without testing. They could have maybe started testing minor leaguers earlier who didn't have the protection of the union. So it's complicated, and I don't know. I mean, all the commissioners seem to get in the Hall of Fame. So
Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
I mean, I'm a Barry Bonds guy, so it's hard. So for me, I'm always like, listen, I know he did it, I get it, but look, he was bad against guys who did it as well. So I mean, it all comes out in the wash, I feel. But you mentioned court earlier, and in chapter 5 called Penny Nails in Court, you bring to light, like I said, the chase for that home run record. I mean, even though, do you feel as though, and the strike that I was talking about, but you feel as though that's kind of when baseball came back, and are we kind of in that rut again? And could this chase with Albert Pujols and Aaron Judge kind of bring more people back? Because I still see a lot of empty ballparks out there.
well, I'd say two things. One is the 98 chase for the home run record. It was just a lot of fun.
It
And I
was.
think people were having so much fun that, they kind of looked past it. Remember when the Andrew was in Mark McGuire's locker, it didn't cause this huge flap. It was sort of, well, gee, that's there. It's legal. Let's just move on. I actually think that it was, a year or so earlier, 2 years earlier, when Cal Ripken broke the Lou Gehrig record for most consecutive games, that really helped to bring the game back from the strike. So I do think that the home run chase was meaningful and fun for everybody, but I don't know that I give it quite the impact as some other folks. That said, I think the Aaron Judge thing now is great. I think Pujols is fun, but whether you get 700, whether you hit a round number, I don't think that's nearly as kind of as cool as breaking the AL record and defending it how you want to look at the steroid era. The other record, the all-time record.
Yeah, and Albert's such a great guy. Albert doesn't even care, right? He's having fun. He's like, look, he's not going to play another year just to hit 2 home runs. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's done. But it's great with the live look-ins with Aaron Judge. I think it brings, like you said, brings more fun to the game. But obviously, part of the title of your book is innovation, thin line between innovation and cheating. And technology continues to rise in this world and become more meticulous. Will MLB always be able to stay ahead of the curve and keep it from tarnishing the game with all these new electronics?
No, I don't think so, which is going to make some of this stuff going forward a little bit interesting. I just as a complete aside, I mean, modern prism binoculars were invented in 1894, and by 1899, the Phillies were using them to steal signs from center field. And so if there's an innovation out there, people are going to figure out how to use it. And just if you look at the spider tack and the pitching stuff, it's clearly different now, which I think is why they cracked down. It's, when someone was using Vaseline to figure out how to throw a pitch, I think that's different than using something high tech like spider tack that was invented to hold things, these world's strongest man, to hold these big giant the giant stones they carry. And then you can marry that up with the high speed video. So you're actually getting in these picture design labs where you can see what's going on. So clearly some of this stuff has just gotten much more sophisticated, which I think A, is going to make it harder to crack down on it. And B, I think that's part of the reason we see this differently today now, maybe than we did 50 years ago.
Yeah, it's going to be incredibly difficult. It really is. I mean, it's just you saw it, and that's the thing. Where right, the Houston Astros took stealing signs to a whole new level. And let me ask you this: phases of cheating, and this is what I've always said, and let me know your opinion on this. I've always said, listen, like you mentioned about early grade school baseball, little league, right? Like you were taught to steal signs in the sense that are you flipping off the catcher, you flipping off the pitcher, you look at what's going on. And then the Houston Astros take it to a whole new level. And like you said, even though they won, they wouldn't even be talking about it. But can there be variations, or should cheating just be cheating?
No, I think I mean I think there's variations the same way there is in the rest of society. I mean, not
Yep.
all crimes have the same penalty and are viewed the same. And I think it's the same in baseball. And generally, if you're on second base and you pick up the sign and signal to the batter, that's great. You're perfectly allowed to do that. And I think the difference there is mechanical means. Right? I mean, why is Tommy John surgery legal? You take one part of a tendon from your leg and put it in your elbow, and steroids isn't. I mean, to me, the difference there is that one is sort of restorative. It's allowing you to come back to sort of your quote natural state, and the other moves you beyond your natural state. So I think there are sort of nuances and ways to look at this, and ways that we do. Things I think that are done where you're hiding from the umpire is different than things that are done in front of them. So I don't know. I mean, and just talking in terms of going forward and the mechanic and look at sort of if someone came up with the bionic man, an artificial elbow that was better than the human elbow, would that be legal? Who knows? I mean, who knows where we're going.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, it really is, especially when we bring up about Tiny John. It makes me think about that old Disney Rookie of the Year baseball movie where the kid, Henry Rowengarter gets his operating on. All of a sudden, he's throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, right? So you kind of never know. Let me ask you this: I'm going to say a name and just tell me your first thought that comes to mind. I say Barry Bonds. What do you say?
I say great player, but with baggage.
I say Alex Rodriguez.
Anyone who was caught, actually caught, I put in a little bit different class, but again, great player with baggage.
Last one, David Ortiz.
Ooh, I don't know. Great player. I don't know about the baggage. That I don't know. I'll leave that to the listener.
Exactly, and that's the fun. That's why I always say you stump it, because it's like, did he not? So it's always going to be a question all the time. But Dan, let everybody know. Obviously, just tell more about this book, because this book is phenomenal when we talk about statisticals, and a bunch of analogies that you've already touched on that are in this book. But where can they buy it? What are some of the upcoming appearances you and Mark have as well? Like, what's going on going forward?
No, I appreciate your asking. So the book's Intentional Balk, and our website is intentionalbalkbook.com. And at the website, there's links. You can buy it online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and there's a book site that allows you to buy it from your independent bookstore if you prefer. And then we also have a link to our upcoming appearances, which include some podcasts, some radio, and a few in-store, in bookstore personal appearances. So appreciate your asking, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everybody, I will have all those links in the description. So all you need to do is click on them. You go right to this book, and this can be yours right here. You want to make sure you get it. Trust me, it is definitely a great read. Well, Dan, thanks so much for joining me here on the Final Judgment. And for everybody tuning in, I appreciate everything. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll catch you back here next time. So there he is, Dan Levitt. I hope you enjoyed that, because Dan is a brilliant mind. Okay. And I love bringing these people on here all the time, because it's a different kind of concept, right? We could talk about sports all day long. We could talk about opinions, which is obviously what this is. Okay, but this guy he is behind the analytics. He's behind all the innovation. He's behind everything. So he gets a different perspective. I mean, listen, he's on MLB Network. I mean, honestly, I mean, he's on all different kinds of shows. He's written 4 or 5 books. He's won prestigious MLB awards, written, published articles. That's the kind of guy that you want to follow when it comes to the world of sports, especially the world of Major League Baseball. So don't forget, in the description, give him a follow on Twitter. Make sure you're following his website, and make sure, again, International Balk, thin line between innovative and cheating. It's a fantastic read as well. But let's get into some random judgments here. Before and speaking of analytics, let's not forget, man, like all you people out there that like me, building something from the ground up, have your own system, have your own page, have your own website, trying to drive traffic to the website. That's where you go to SEObrand.com. These guys been doing it for at least 15 plus years. They take cold calls and make them turn into leads, into sales. And one of the biggest things, I'll be honest with you, I tell you this all the time is, who the hell knows where some of your stuff comes from or where some of your stuff goes? Where's your traffic come from? How do you create traffic? Right? How does SEO work? Well, that's why it's called SEO brand, because they brand the SEO. They're all about the SEO, search engine optimization. So whether it be small business or big business, it doesn't matter. They will help anybody. Just grab the website, click on it, get a phone call going, get a consultation going, and at least you can see where you can go from there. And make sure you tell them you heard it here and Tony Jigsaw Cutillo sent you. It's the most important thing. Make sure you tell them I sent you. Big read, man. You at least got to make that phone call. At least. No, I'm just kidding. But now let's get into some random judges before we get out of here, because it is Monday night. And we talked about the Eagles. We had Dan Levitt on talking about Major League Baseball, which can't beat that. Make sure you're following at Judge Jigsaw on Twitter and Instagram. Make sure you're following The Final Judgment on YouTube and any podcast platform that you have. Now, random judgments. I try to find, so like, one of the biggest people I respect in the entire sports industry is Jason Stark. If you do not follow Jason Stark when it comes to Major League Baseball and just facts and analytics and stats, you are doing yourself wrong, my friend. But this isn't for Jason Stark, but it's another a fun fact in the NFL. By scoring a touchdown in each of the first 3 quarters yesterday, the Detroit Lions open up the 2022 season with a touchdown in all 11 quarters played. This establishes a brand new NFL record for the most consecutive quarters with a touchdown scored to begin a season in league history. Wow. Like, you would never think. You would never. I couldn't believe it. Blew my mind. When I read that, it absolutely blew my mind. By scoring a touchdown each of the first 3 quarters yesterday, the Lions have opened up the season with a touchdown, all 11 quarters played. The most consecutive quarters with a touchdown scored is crazy. If you had to ask me that, I would never guess that would be a record that the Detroit Lions would hold. Again, the best team in football that just can't win games. I'm just saying, best team in football that just can't win games. And then finally, we've been asking for this for years, and it finally comes true. Somebody actually listened. And by listening, the NFL finally adopts a new Pro Bowl format. They're replacing the Pro Bowl with the week-long skills competition and flag football game. Finally, the new event will replace, straight from NFL right here, the new event will replace the full contact showcase started in 1951. It will be renamed the Pro Bowl games and will feature the AFC and NFC players showcasing their football and non-football skills and challenges over several days. Brilliant, because now it's only one day. Several days are going to make more money. 2023 games will be held in Las Vegas. How even more perfect is that? And the flag football game at Allegiant Stadium, February 5th. I can't wait. Listen, this is going to take over. The days of the dunk contest and a 3-point contest in the NBA, move over, NBA. The NFL is here. They should have done this 20 friggin' years ago. They didn't do it. They finally done it. See, this is what happens when you have innovation, like international ball. This is what happens when you have people thinking ahead, like SEObrand.com. These guys can think ahead and put you in the right direction. And somebody finally, maybe it was a publicist, a la Rise and React Media. If you need coverage, look me up at Media Rise on Twitter. But maybe finally somebody got in their ear and said, look, it's about time. Nobody wants to play in this Pro Bowl. We don't want to get anybody hurt. Nobody wants to travel. At the end of the day, what we want to do is we just want to showcase our players and have fun. And finally, Finally, somebody listened. The one good thing Roger Goodell actually has done over the last 10 years, or however long he's been in office. But finally, they finally did something that the fan wanted, right? The fan wanted. So again, this is going to be a huge win for the NFL. So I'm very glad, very, very glad that they finally decided to do it. But listen, we hit that 40-minute, 45-minute mark, which is where we end all these shows. But again, man, Final Judgment's been great. We're up to 11 episodes. I think we're almost at 900 subscribers, almost getting that 1,000 on YouTube that everybody wants to hit. Excuse me, still only 100 and about 120 followers on Twitter. Instagram, I don't know, maybe about 50, but slow build. It's organic, right? It's a slow build. We'll get out there. But again, make sure you give me a follow at Judge Jigsaw, Instagram, Twitter. All the show stuff will be there. Make sure you're following on the podcast page. Make sure you're following on the YouTube page as well. Powered by Heat Ratio, Win Daily Sports. Make sure you're following those two outfits as well. And again, the sponsor of the show, SEObrand.com for all your digital marketing needs. That being said, I want to give a shout out to Dan Levitt of the MLB of International Balk, the author and co-author with Mark Armour. Those guys are fantastic. Dan was a great guest, fantastic interview. We'll have more to come with Dan, I'm sure, as his book tour continues, which is a great baseball mind. So love to bring him on every now and then just to talk about some national baseball perspective when it comes to past and present for the major leagues. But as always, man, give me a shout out, give me a prayer. Tomorrow's the big day. Get the MRI results on the leg to finally see if I can start the rehab and hopefully walk normal again. And they can rule out surgery, which I'm very, very, very hoping that is the case. So, like I say before, some people have thoughts and some people have takes. But right here on this show, only do you get the final judgment.